Hello, how you doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day today. In this video, we're going to be covering how to find the right home equity line of credit in the state of Alabama. This is an ongoing series where we've been going state by state, covering the second position home equity line of credit. We're focusing on local credit unions in each state that can offer us the best incentives with this specific product regarding the second position home equity line of credit. As soon as we finish that specific product, we're going to open up another series on the first lien home equity line of credit, and we'll cover all the states and do the same thing we're pretty much doing with the second lien HELOC. The difference that you'll notice is there is a ridiculously low amount of banks that offer a first position home equity line of credit compared to second position. So what will most likely happen is I'm just going to do the research in advance. It'll probably be a much shorter series, probably just a few videos. And there is honestly only a handful of banks out there that offer a first position HELOC compared to second position. With that being said, like I said, we're in the state of Alabama, and there are some action items that I've been covering in each and every video. And those action items stay the same. This is the framework that we are looking at to determine the best credit unions and banks that offer the home equity line of credit. As I'm recording this video in October of 2025, prime is currently at 7.25%. Interest rates were just reduced last month. So those of you who already have a home equity line of credit in place, especially if it's a variable home equity line of credit, you're going to experience a rate deduction most likely this month. If you haven't, that is because you're probably on a fixed rate home equity line of credit product, or you're still in the intro rate period, or your home equity line of credit only changes on a quarterly or semi-annual basis and your month just hasn't come up just yet. Action items on the left hand side of the board, like I said, stays the same. Run through it real quick. We need a credit score of 720 or higher, preferably. DTI 30% or less, no more than 45. LTV options, if we stay in the 70 to 90% LTV range, you're typically going to get a better rate, better offer, better incentives overall. Closing costs, 0 or under 500 bucks preferably. Intro rate, you're typically going to see 6 to 12 months. In some rare cases in certain states, you're going to see 3 to 5 year fixed rate options. The 3 to 5 year fixed rate option only makes sense in this current economy, in this current interest rate environment, if the fixed rate is 2 percentage points below prime today. If you can get 2% or even less than that in today's environment, that is going to be attractive. But if you see a 3 to 5 year fixed home equity line of credit at 7.5% or anything above prime or anything close to prime, it's just not going to be worth it today because we are in a declining interest rate environment. We are likely going to see rates come down even further by the end of this year and most likely going into next year. So I don't want to be locked in at a 7.5% rate for the next 3 to 5 years if I can experience rates coming down. So I would rather choose, say, a 6 to 12 month lock-in rate below prime, and then whatever it adjusts back to, I'm able to experience that downward trajectory. Now let's flip it. Let's say this is 2021, 2022, when interest rates were really low and you could lock in a home equity line of credit for around 3 to 5%. That was extremely attractive to lock in a 3 to 5 year home equity line of credit in the 3 to 5% range. And literally from 2020, 2021, Up until now and next year, those people that locked in those rates have literally opted out of the whole high interest rate environment that we've just been seeing the last few years. So those people had their HELOCs at around 3 to 5.5% ish range. We saw rates go up as high as 8.5%. While they were cruising at 3 to 5, they were knocking off debt. They were doing velocity banking. They were getting massive results. Maybe they even had to finance some things like repairs around the home. Maybe they had to finance a new car. Instead of financing at the car dealership for 6, 7, 8%, they financed it through their HELOC at around 3 to 5. And they were able to accelerate that debt much faster. So not only is the home equity line of credit efficient in many cases to use for debt elimination, but it's also can be a great tool in certain environments to finance certain things, maybe even investments. And the idea is that we all get to a point where we're completely debt free outside of, let's say, your mortgage. If you locked in a 2, 3, 4% mortgage, maybe it doesn't make sense to pay that off in this current environment, unless there are certain situations where it's like, yeah, it makes complete sense for you to accelerate that mortgage, but maybe we're just not using velocity banking to do that because the tool, the rate that you're sitting at is just too high. Okay, so there's those situations. And for the last 7 years, I've been helping a ton of people not just get debt free, but master debt, master capital and leverage, understand how to leverage and use to create more cash flow. And we can begin to invest in different opportunities and control your cost. So you're able to, say, borrow from your home equity line of credit, acquire another property, invest in your business, and then you're paying back the capital you borrowed at a much faster pace, and you're reducing that total cost of interest, reducing your risk overall, allowing the investment to create cash flow. The cash flow pays back your original money that you borrowed. And so that's the goal, really, just to get everyone to that point. And I'm also doing this series to help all of you avoid getting the wrong products. Many of you say that you can't find banks in your state. Well, I've basically been debunking that for the past couple of weeks now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go Google different banks. And mainly, I'm looking for credit unions in the state of Alabama that are offering a prime minus interest rate with some sort of intro rate attached to that, no closing costs. Those are like the main things I'm looking for. And then I'm going to write them out on the board, see if Alabama has come to compete. Then from there, I'll give you my top picks and we'll close out. And we're just going to keep that rhythm going state by state. So let's dive into this. I already have a bunch of banks pulled up that I found, and we're just going to go one by one. And I encourage you, if you live in the state of Alabama, whether you're live or catching the replay, to back up my research. Because the reality is, when I research banks in other states, in other areas, I'm not going to get every single bank that pops up. Mainly, I'm going to get the banks that are doing the most amount of marketing. So please verify my research by doing this with me. Let me show you what I'm researching. This is what I typically type in. I'll say credit unions in the state that I'm researching that offer a home equity line of credit. So I'm typing it out fully so it knows exactly what I'm trying to look for. So we have Alabama Credit Union. It's the first bank that I found. We have here 80% loan to value. It says 7.5% for the 80%. 90% is 8.5%. So that is a prime plus 0.25%. always like to read these details here, see what other additional information I can get. Looks like we do have some closing costs. Okay, so the closing cost is contingent on us keeping the line of credit open, which shouldn't be a problem for the vast majority of us. Not a whole lot of information. Let's see if we can get some more details. Nope. So this website isn't giving us too much. Oh, here we go. So no closing cost options, no annual fee. No closing costs will be charged if loan balance remains above 5,000 bucks. So if I were to go with this bank, keep in mind for the first 2 years, we don't want to fully pay off the HELOC. So every time I get close to 5,000, we want to make our next chunk. So typically this is not an issue when we are paying off debt or when we're basically moving other debts into the home equity line of credit. Mobile banking friendly, which is cool. 15-year draw, that's cool. But again, so far it's a prime plus, so I'm not going to write it on the board just yet. I'm just going to take note of the different banks that I'm researching. So we got Alabama Credit Union, that was one. And that was a prime plus 2.5. This next bank, Redstone Federal Credit Union. No annual fee, no closing costs, up to 95%. Variable rate tied to prime. They give you a credit card, so we know this is mobile friendly. Max 250. So it's as low as 7.875%. So as you're doing research, we've already set a standard, which was here. Similar options, and the rate was 7.5%. No matter what my LTV option is with this bank, the rate is as low as 7.875%, unless we can find a little more information and see if I go lower on the LTV, will they drop the rate? Minimum annual 7. However, your initial APM baseline evaluation credit, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So it does not look like it matters whether we did 80 or 95% LTV. They're going as low as 7.875%. So what do? We'll just cancel that bank for now. Okay, because we already have another bank that's more attractive. Next bank, we have Alabama Central Credit Union. Oftentimes, you got to be careful and just be mindful that when you're dealing with credit unions, they often use the same names. So this is Alabama Credit Union, and this is Alabama Central Credit Union. It's like one word difference, but completely different bank. So this bank is doing an intro rate starting at 3.99%, but we don't know how long. We know it's mobile banking friendly. We just don't have enough information. Let's see if we can get more. Loans. Second. So it just says that 3.99 from 80% LTV all the way to 100 revolving. Not enough information. I can still put it on the board for now. I'll just keep it up in my tabs. But this would require calling this bank if you live in Alabama. So Alabama Central Credit Union. Key detail 3.99 intro, but we don't know the other facts. Got this other bank called Legacy Credit Union. Easy access to cash. We only have a 5-year draw. Enjoy a low APR, limited fees, so lower closing costs. Let's see. Get an extended repayment period up to 50 million initial draw. So we need a 720. If we have a 720 credit score or higher, then we would most likely be at their prime rate. So this is just a prime HELOC, 7.25% based on 80% LTV. So with this bank, has to be 80% LTV, 720 credit score or higher. So far, based on that, with a max credit line, and we see here the small sentence at the bottom of 150,000. Remember I said earlier, LTV, we don't want to go above 45%. It says don't exceed, then even if you had a 720 credit score, but your DTI was above 43%, you're not going to get that rate. So it all has to come together. Great credit score, lower DTI, 80%. You need 20% or more equity in the home for all those things to line up. And they only do a max of 150. So far, this is the best bank from our research that we've done. So we got Legacy Credit Union. The key detail here is it's just based off prime. With the 150K max. So that means these two banks pretty much fall off. All right, but we'll just keep them up for now. Legacy so far is beating Alabama and Alabama Central. This next bank, we got Riverfall Credit Union. Let's see what we got. Funds available anytime without reapplying. Revolving credit. Interest rate is adjustable. Credit limits based on worthiness. Maximum term is 7 years with a 5-year draw. Okay, so small draw period. Don't love that. But it also says the maximum term is 25 years with a 10-year draw. Okay. Let's look at their rates. See if they reveal anything to us. Here we go. For their adjustable rate home equity line of credit 10-year draw as low as prime minus. Then they have a construction line of credit up to 12 months as low as prime minus 0.25. We're going to ignore that because of that 12-month period. We want to stick with this product, specifically their adjustable rate home equity line of credit, interest only payment, 10-year draw, prime minus. Their 5-year draw product is as low as Wall Street Journal 3-month Treasury bill plus 3.25%. Let's look that up. Treasury bill rates today, because that's different from prime. So for longer term, the 3-month Treasury bill is around 3.86%. That's what it said over here, right? Yeah, so 3.86 plus 3.25 is 7.11. So it's also technically below prime of 7.25. So it's a little bit interesting the way they calculate that home equity line of credit, but I would still personally pick this over this because of that draw period. 5 years is a little too short for the vast majority of my audience, you guys watching, where the type of debt most people I work with, the timeline is 5 to 7 years. That's just getting out of debt. So let's say you got out of debt within 5 years. Okay, great. But now I only have 1 year left to maybe leverage the HELOC to start making investments, leveraging that capital. So I personally would rather have 10 years because that accommodates the full plan of getting out of debt, then having that same liquidity, all that cash flow that you use to get out of debt, instead of starting from zero with the savings account at zero, let's just say, you now have a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 HELOC that we can immediately put to work on the investment side. And that allows us to catch up in a sense, where we got the benefit of getting ourselves out of debt. We get the guaranteed results of saving money on interest. And for a lot of folks, that just makes a lot of financial sense. Also, you're going to be a disciplined investor, I would argue, as well as a more disciplined borrower. Now you're going to be on the other side of borrowing and lending where it gets more fun. So this bank, what was this? Riverfall. So now Riverfall is the most attractive at prime minus 0.25%. So we're going to keep that bank up. I'm going to put this over here like that. That was Legacy. Okay, here's the next bank. Avadian Credit Union. We have HELOC Plus and home equity loan. So we're going to focus on the HELOC Plus product. Ten-year draw, interest only. Plus margin, don't love that. $10 years. Minimum advance. Got some closing costs. So notice how that, you got to keep a $9,000 balance only in the first 6 months though, which again is not going to be difficult for most. But that prime plus margin pretty much cancels that bank out. Not attractive. So Avadian will cut that one off. Next bank we have here is AOD Credit Union with a 15-year draw, as we can see. 90% LTV. Annual rate as low as prime. Our regular rates are beating many introductory rates. Okay. Year draw. Well, okay, so it's at prime. I'll keep it open. Not the most attractive bank. We have a prime minus. Southern Energy Credit Union. We have here a 10-year draw. 85%. Closing costs waived as long as you do an initial 10K. No annual fee. They're not giving us how the rate is determined. It says that fixed rate HELOC, but we want the variable. So I can't put this bank on the board because they're just not giving us the details. Again, another bank that we would have to call, get more facts. Oh yeah, I already covered Redstone. I did Credit Central, Redstone. Let's do Alabama 1. HELOC. Low closing, banking platform. Let's go to rates. Oh, so they're not sharing rates of their HELOCs. Oh, here we go. Prime Plus. So that's a no. Won't waste time there. That was Alabama 1. Let's do Max Credit Union. See what they're offering. Here we go. Finally, an intro rate. 4.5 intro rate, 10-year draw. Has to do an initial 10,000. Maintain a minimum balance of at least 10,000 for the first 18 months for max to cover closing costs. We don't love that. Minimum annual percentage rate will be the current prime rate or prime plus 1% based on your credit. So we want to make sure our credit is where it needs to be to avoid that prime plus, because they do go as low as prime. Then they have this intro rate of 4.5%. We just don't know how long. So they're worth putting on the board. So we got Max Credit Union, Prime, 4.5% intro. It's worth having a conversation. Mobile banking. Let's see. Okay, promotional. Okay, for 6 months. Okay. Not terrible. Looks like they cover other... Oh no, these are just different areas. Serving Central and East, so it doesn't even sound like they cover all of Alabama. But maintaining that 10K balance is only going to make sense if we're doing bigger chunks. If you're doing micro chunking, not going to be all that great. But if we're doing bigger chunks and we can easily maintain that 10K balance for the first 18 months, that's not going to be a big problem. So we'll keep that bank open for now. Let's do... We did One, we did Ave, we did Riverford, we did Legacy, we did AOD, we did Southern. Let's see what other banks I can find. We got North Alabama. I don't know. Doesn't look like they offer a HELOC. Yep, nope. Okay, this bank doesn't offer a HELOC. Get out of there. Might have to go to page 2 of Google. 5-Star Credit Union. Equity line of credit. We know they offer a home equity line of credit, but again, not giving much information. So you can just write that in your notes for now. If you live in Alabama, 5-Star Credit Union is a bank that you have to call to get more information. Let's see what Teachers Federal is doing, as they keep popping up on my feed. Doesn't even look like they offer home equity line of credit. Ugh. Yep. We're not even getting any info from them. Let's go to page 2. So based on this research so far, Alabama did not come to compete. It's one of those states that is not competing in the Department of Home Equity Line of Credits. We're not seeing too many offers. We're not seeing too much information promoting it. See, another bank, it's just very little information, if any at all. But that was Emblem. Let's do Auburn. HELOC. 250. Let's go to rates. So home equity, 9.25. Not attractive. Auburn. All in credit union. Let's see what they're doing. Equity. Ten-year draw. 95. LTV. No information. That's no fun. Let's see. Borrow. Let's click on loan rates, see if it reveals anything here. Oh, nice. Okay. We're on to something. So all in, notice how I had to go to page 2 just to find it. So we just got, we got to dig a little deeper. So we got all in credit union, Alabama, with a prime minus 0.5%. So far, that's the best offer, 10-year draw. Yeah, pretty attractive. We'll keep that bank up. Let's look at this some more. Covered all those banks. So far, I'm not giving up yet on the local credit unions, but we have in other states before looked at bigger banks that were competing with the smaller banks. Let's do Tyndall. Home equity. No closing, 10-year draw, mobile banking friendly. Don't love that. That's basically prime plus 2.5. With no intro rate. This is actually a bigger bank because not available in Texas, Hawaii, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so they don't make it because that's prime plus. Win South. Ooh. 5.5 intro, first year, 10-year draw, interest only, no closing costs. Mobile banking, friendly. Help me out with the rate, come on. Help me out with the rate. Give me a good rate, please. Ooh, what does that mean? Home equity. What does that mean? So it says 0 points, so it's either prime, but what does 4.75 mean? Rate lock period 0 days, 740. So interest rate 4.75 for first 12 months, then prime plus some borrows, okay. Interest only for the first 10 years. Principal and interest between 0.25 and 2%. Ugh. So at best, this is a prime plus 0.25 with a 4.75% fixed rate or 5.5 on the previous page, the 5.5 that we saw, which was right there. So I would, like, we could put this on the board. We could. Let's do Win South. 5.5%. Prime plus 2.5. We could, but not loving it. What else we got? Fort McAllen. You know what? We'll look a couple more in the state of Alabama, then we're going to have to broaden our search. Oh, here we go. Prime minus 0.25. Fixed introductory rate for 1 year. What is that? Oh, you can only get 100K max. So we don't really love that. 5-year draw. Don't love that. But could make sense for the right person. Doesn't say what that intro rate is. Could throw them on the bank though, you know. So on the whiteboard. So Fort McClellan Credit Union. We have a 1 year and then a prime minus 0.25. 100K max credit limit. Let's see what New Horizons is doing. Home equity line of credit may include a margin. They do have a high max credit limit. That's cool. No closing costs. We just don't know if it's Prime Plus. It says may include a margin. So there was a world where there might not be a margin. But we could throw it on the board just for the simple fact of it being a $400,000 max. That might make sense for the person that's looking for a larger line. Whereas a lot of these banks are only doing 150, 250, 100. New Horizons Credit Union, 400,000 max prime. Okay. Now we're gonna look up a bigger bank. Does Fifth Third Bank cover Alabama? Yes. Okay. Huntsville. Okay. So we were looking at other states. Fifth Third Bank came up. No closing costs. 10-year draw. Let's do that. So we got a prime minus 0.25. So Fifth Third could also be an option for Alabama. But just based on this research, Alabama did not come to play, folks. So if you live in the state of Alabama, based on the research that we've done so far, like I said, you can do additional research, see if you find something better. But I quickly wrote down some banks here that we found some. But let's do my top picks. So when it comes to values, biggest thing I like is a prime minus rate with an intro with no closing costs. If I can get those three things, that's amazing. But my top for me is a prime minus. I always want to be borrowing at a better rate than everybody else. And if I can position myself to do that, then why not in advance? So what were those banks that were doing prime minus? We had All In was prime minus 0.5%. So let me find that bank again. So All In 6.75%, 10-year draw, no intro. 90% LTV. And no closing costs. So we got no closing costs. Looks like 90% LTV. 10-year draw. We like that. Mobile banking friendly. Can't get too upset about that. Okay. So number 2, we saw Fort McClellan with a 1-year intro prime minus 0.25%, but a 100K max credit line. And we saw Riverfall with prime minus. So it's going to be Fort McClellan plus Riverfall. Then 3, we saw Alabama Central doing an intro rate, but we don't know what the prime rate is. We saw Max Credit Union doing a 4.5% intro rate for 6 months. And I believe same thing, we don't know what the rate is. It says Wall Street Journal. Oh, prime. Yeah, so just prime. So, and then who else was doing it? And then we had Wind South was 5.5% for 1 year prime plus. So we're gonna take them off the board because we have Riverfall in Alabama that's also doing an intro rate with just prime, with Max Credit Union at just prime. So we're gonna put those in third place. So Max Credit Union plus Alabama Central, not Alabama Credit Union, right? They wanted prime plus 0.25. So Alabama Central Credit Union. Now, contingent on its rate being prime. We didn't know. You'd have to call and find out if their rate is based off prime. We do know with Max Credit Union, it's just prime. So 7.25%, 4.5% for the first 6 months. Okay. And Max will cover closing costs. Up to $1,000. So it should cover most of the closing costs. I just don't know what their max credit line amount is. It didn't say. Yeah, didn't say. You want to make sure you've got great credit, good DTI to get the prime rate, not prime plus 1%. So Max Credit Union can go up to prime plus 1%, as with any bank for that matter. So this is why you got to get set up real nice before. All right. So these are my top picks for the state of Alabama. Like I said, trust what I'm saying, verify, do the research yourself, call these banks to verify that the information is in fact up to date. Sometimes it can be out of date. Sometimes they're getting ready to roll something out. You know, interest rates just got dropped. So moving forward, we're going to see more competition with banks offering more and more incentives. And if we see rates go down again, you're going to see even more. So what's going to remain relevant in this series is the left-hand side of the board. These banks can come and go. Maybe one day Alabama gets bought out by Legacy, or Legacy gets bought out by Alabama Credit Union, or Alabama Credit Union renames itself as Alabama Central or Alabama South. Don't rely on any bank per se. Rely on the framework. This framework will remain true for years and years to come. These banks may come and go. Okay, because as we've seen over the last 2 decades, we've seen the amount of banks shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink over time. I think total in America today, we have under 5,000 banks today. So let's see, how many banks and credit unions? So banks and credit unions together. As of the first quarter of 2025, here, I'll share my screen so we read together. There are approximately 4,462 banks and 4,411 credit unions, so totaling 8,873 institutions. All right. The number of banks has been in a declining trend, with 4,577 just in March of 24 and 4,715 in December of 22. What is happening? What's happening is the big banks are buying up these other banks, or due to poor management with different banks, fractional reserve lending. Okay. These banks are over leveraging themselves and getting into big trouble, doing things they're not supposed to do. And the too big to fail banks are just swallowing up all this competition. So that's alarming for future generations. Okay, it's gonna, like, when you have less and less banks, it creates less and less competition, more monopolies get created within a certain industry. Ultimately, lending gets harder, okay? Borrowing money gets harder, economies get tighter. It's not good. It's not a good thing, which is why the end game in this community, on this channel, with our finances, our end game is to become independent from the banks. This is why we've seen in the last decade such a mass adoption of cryptocurrencies and digital banking and decentralized banking, because more and more people across the world, not just the United States, but across the world, are becoming less and less trustworthy of banks. Banks do not have the cleanest track record of taking care of our money. We've seen multiple layers of abuse, fraud, waste, you name it, etc., which is why we need to learn how the game is played in the banking world. We need to know how how it's played correctly and how it is played incorrectly for profit, exploitation, and gain, so that those that acquire the power over time and influence can eventually change the game for the better. The world of crypto is attempting to do that. They're attempting to make the banking game better for everyone, trying to level the playing field by reducing fees like wire transfer fees and daily monthly maintenance fees and holding fees and very low earnings, all that. So the crypto world's trying to solve for that right now. We're seeing a mass adoption. So when you see people pulling their savings and their cash reserves out of banks, when those banks have less and less customers, what happens? Well, eventually that bank's going to get swallowed up by another bank. It's going to get swallowed up by another bank, and it's going to reduce the amount of banks. So depending on where you stand in this decade and future years to come could be very beneficial or very dangerous. For the people that are going to benefit in this transition, in this cycle, are those who understand how the banking world works, just from like a general understanding. I'm not asking you to go create your own bank, but just to understand how the banking industry works, how these different products work, so that you can leverage those products to get out of debt faster, remove your obligations from the institutions, start cash flowing positive, saving your money outside of the banks. This is where we learn about cash value life insurance, with storing our money at life insurance institutions where we're able to park our money, earn more, tax-free, have the death benefit, and have all these other benefits that come with it. That's huge. Then have some exposure to the decentralized financial industry, crypto, develop in there, and ultimately have this position as an individual in your household. Okay, if all these banks fail, we're still fine. So you don't want to be the customer 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now, holding the bag of banks that are failing left and right. We don't want to keep our money in the banks forever, especially large amounts. We want to keep our money in gold, silver, digital assets, real estate, life insurance institutions. We don't want to have, we just want to use banks just for the expense for moving money here and there. Like, that's really it. But in terms of having money sit idle, long term, you don't want to have your money in banks. You're going to hear this more and more. The conversation, you're going to see more and more content creators, more and more big time people that are just sounding the alarm day in and day out. It'll take forever for the masses to adopt it because the masses are not watching videos like this, right? This is just very, very few. There's 8 people on this live stream right now and hundreds, thousands that watch this video, but we're talking millions and millions of people that just are completely unaware. So you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game, and that's good. Your job is to master this stuff and then go share. Share this video with family and friends. Share this information with coworkers, people that you know, so that they can get exposed, so that they can learn. All right? Logan says, don't use Google search engine, use start page or something else. Okay, on the next one, I'll try that. Yep. You think we can use an asset to create our own line of credit or credit card at a credit union, not to mention lower interest rates because it's secured by the asset? That's basically called a secured personal line of credit. So yes, you can use your own cash to essentially get a secured personal line of credit, which most likely will be at a potentially like prime or prime minus. Don't know that for a fact. Same with credit cards. Credit cards are going to be a higher interest rate. There you go. Yep. If you're doing finances great, you actually will have a zero in your checking account at most times. That is the goal. We just want to use checking accounts to expense money. We don't want to be having dollars sit and do nothing in checking accounts, earning nothing. We want to have that money elsewhere, earning, and then just using our checking account to expense. With that being said, we're going to close it out here. It's been great spending some time with you covering home equity line of credit in the state of Alabama. And tomorrow we'll cover another state. We're going to keep going on this series. For one-on-one coaching, to work with me directly, you're going to want to click some of the links below, check out some of the services I have, take a deeper dive. I'm going to be closing my one-to-one coaching services by the end of the year, or when my spots fully fill up. I have about 37 spots remaining for families that are looking to say, you know what, let's go on a 10, 20 year plus run with my finances to not only just get out of debt, but to build a strong savings vehicle, to build a strong investment portfolio, to build all the different things that you want to achieve according to your purpose, and ultimately become an abundant, cheerful giver that leaves a phenomenal legacy behind for the next generation, to get all this helpful information out, education, to people that you love. Very, very important. So let's achieve that together. If you're someone that's been watching for a while, you're coming at the perfect time. All right, if you've been following me for years, you're coming at the perfect time. I've now been just developing myself, getting better and better, getting smarter and smarter with this stuff. And those of you that are brand new, you've got all the content to go back and start deep diving. You want to maximize your experience on this YouTube channel, go to the playlist. And I have playlists just dialed in. It's titled according to what you're looking for. And you just go one by one in order. So it'll go from oldest video to latest video, telling you have the best experience on this channel when you do that. This way the information is narrow because I do cover a lot of different avenues on this channel. So playlist is where you want to be. And with that, God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be talking soon. Bye now.